Hi guys, welcome to the Kitchen Think, a place where we share with you our thoughts, our ideas, our conversations about recent scientific discoveries in the field of medicine, health, and fitness. In today's video, what we'd like to do is answer the top 5 most common questions about COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines that we get from our viewers. So let's get started. The first question that we often get is whether the development of COVID-19 vaccines was rushed. And the answer is that the development of vaccines against COVID-19 was definitely fast, but it wasn't rushed. And the reason why it was so fast, there's actually many reasons for it. The first reason is that the scientific community decided to take advantage of mRNA technologies to develop these vaccines. So mRNA technologies had been around since the early 90s. And for the last 10 to 12 years, mRNA technologies have been used to develop therapies against certain diseases, including cancer. So the technology was around for quite a little bit of time. The advantage of this technology, especially in the development of vaccines, is that you can use it and develop these vaccines at an incredibly fast pace, which is what you've been seeing lately. So often the question comes up is, well, how come we never had these mRNA vaccines? How come we never used them before? And to be completely honest, we never had the need for it. We never faced these type of, or this a pandemic before. So when we found ourselves in this situation, the scientific community basically decided to exploit the mRNA technology so that we can make a vaccine as fast as possible because we need it. It was imminent. And because of that, obviously, a lot of money was invested into the development of these vaccines, which obviously helped get them developed. I can also tell you that they were given accelerated approval to be used in humans, but there was no corners cut, meaning every single company that had these vaccines had to test these vaccines in clinical trials to make sure that everything was working the way they expected it to work and that it was safe. I can tell you, for example, that historically, when you see any adverse events from a vaccine, it usually happens within the first 45 days after the administration of the vaccine. So that's historically. And the Food and Drug Administration, which gives approvals to some of these new drugs, required every single company that was developing or is developing COVID-19 vaccines to monitor the patients that were receiving the vaccine in the clinical trials for a minimum of 60 days before they could apply for the approval of their vaccine to be used in humans. 60 days, which meant that if they were to see any adverse event, they would see it earlier, since before it had been seen in the first 45 days. So the reason why COVID-19 vaccines were so fast is because we use a brand new technology, because we had to, which was a fast technology that we could take advantage of because we already knew of it. There was a tremendous amount of effort from the scientific community and a lot of money invested for the development of the vaccine. And also, obviously, priority was given to the reviewing of the trials and the reviewing of the data about these vaccines so we could get them to the population as soon as possible. So that's in a nutshell the answer to the question. If you need any clarification, make sure you put in a comment in the comment section. So the next question is whether the mRNA in the vaccines is going to actually alter or change my DNA. And the answer is no. The reason why is because the DNA and the RNA actually never see each other inside of your cells. Let me explain. Inside of the cell, you have a nucleus. And the nucleus, think of it like an avocado pit inside of the avocado. So in the nucleus, you have your genomic material, the DNA. The RNA is found outside of the nucleus, inside the cell. So they're basically in two different compartments of the cell. Now, one thing that I'd like to mention is that the mRNA actually doesn't stick around for very long. It does its job, and if it's not being used, it's being degraded by the cell. So the reason why I mentioned that is because there's no worries about the mRNA sticking around for too long and creating any kind of toxic effects on the cell. So it's either used or not, and if it's not used, it's basically degraded. So it doesn't hang around for very long. Anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Let's go to question number 3. Will the COVID-19 vaccines give me COVID-19? The answer to this question is actually quite the contrary. The goal of a vaccine is to give you the immunity to be able to fight an infection by the virus, SARS-CoV-2, and not allow the disease from developing and you suffering all the ill effects of the disease, in this case, the disease being COVID-19. In traditional vaccine development, usually what scientists do is to use an inactivated form of the virus or an attenuated form of the virus, so either doesn't have any viral activity or very minimal viral activity, and then uses that as the vaccine method. And the virus cannot act as a virus because it's not functional, but the body sees it as a full virus. So therefore it develops the immunity to that virus. Now, in the mRNA vaccines that are being used currently, the mRNA in the vaccine, once it's injected into your cell, it will recreate a very small portion of a protein on the surface of the virus, but it cannot recapitulate or reproduce the entire virus. So you will never see the full virus. And that small protein is sufficient to create an immune response that would allow you to fight off an infection by the virus and never suffer the disease, COVID-19. Hopefully that answers your question. On to question number 4. Once I am vaccinated, how long will it take for the vaccine to reach its full protective effect? So the answer to this question is quite clear. We know that about 7 to 14 days after the last dose of your vaccine, you will be fully benefiting from that vaccine. And we know that because experiments were done to answer that specific question. So some of the companies that have developed the COVID-19 vaccine measured the ability of antibodies to neutralize or block the virus. And the way they did this is they took samples, blood samples from individuals that were vaccinated, and they looked at the antibodies in their blood and the ability of these antibodies to what we call neutralize or block the virus. And what they saw is that the antibodies in these individuals had the maximum ability to neutralize the virus 7 and 14 days after the last dose of their vaccine. So anywhere between 7 to 14 days after the last dose of vaccine, you will be fully benefiting from that vaccine. All right, let's go to question number 5 and the last question in this video. The question is, if I am vaccinated, if I receive the COVID-19 vaccine, can I still be infectious? Meaning, can I still carry the virus and potentially infect somebody with the virus? Well, technically you can, but the likelihood is very small. That's part of the role or the goal of the vaccines. Let me break it down a little bit. Let's review some of the information that we already know. So what we know is that once you build immunity to COVID-19 or to the virus SARS-CoV-2, so once you build immunity, the likelihood of being reinfected by the virus and developing COVID-19 has been greatly diminished. So let me backtrack it a little bit. How do you build immunity? Well, two ways to build immunity. One way is you were exposed to the virus, you developed the COVID-19 disease, and you were successful at fighting off the disease. Now, your immune system has learned how to fight the virus. So if you ever were to be exposed to the virus later on, your immune system knows how to fight it off. You have built immunity. The second way to build immunity is to get the vaccine. So the vaccine will give you the immunity to be able to fight off any potential infection by the virus. The great advantage, like we mentioned before about a vaccine, is that it doesn't give you the actual disease. It doesn't give you COVID-19, but it gives you the immunity to fight off a viral infection and therefore not develop the disease COVID-19. All right. So once you have immunity to COVID-19, the likelihood of being reinfected by the virus is greatly diminished. So if you look at some of the efficacy studies of the companies that build some of these vaccines, you can see that there's a 90% protection against developing COVID-19 if you have been vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccines. Now, there's still a 10% chance of being infected, so therefore you could still be infected and carry some virus. Now, the other thing that we know is that if you've built immunity, if you were to be infected by the virus later on, the likelihood of you developing severe disease has been greatly diminished. So you might actually have very mild symptoms, maybe no symptoms at all. So what does this mean? So you still could, if you had a low immune response to the vaccine, you could still potentially be infected later on down the road. But the likelihood of it building or creating havoc in your body and recreating COVID-19, the disease, is very small. So that in general means that the virus, although it infects you, it cannot spread throughout the body. It cannot make a ton of amounts of the actual virus itself. And therefore, the likelihood of you having a ton of virus inside of your body that you can transmit to somebody else has been greatly diminished, which is obviously one of the great things about having immunity or getting a vaccine. So although you could still be infected, and although you could still have some virus in you, the amount of it, and therefore the likelihood of being infectious, infecting somebody with it, is very small, but it can happen. All right, that's what we wanted to share with you today in this video. So we wanted to answer the questions that you've been asking us. Hopefully you found this interesting. In general, our goal is not just to answer your questions, but to also give you the scientific rationale and the facts behind the answers to your questions. On that note, before I forget, you may have noticed that we put some links throughout this video to other videos that we've created. And the reason why we created those links is because those videos could also help or add to the answers that we're giving you today. On that note, I think we'll also put links to those videos in the description of this video. And also in the description of this video, you'll find links to scientific articles. If you're interested in the scientific facts and you're into the science, we welcome you to check out those articles that we're linking in the description of the video. Those are the articles that have helped us answer your questions. So check them out. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you didn't, we'll take the thumbs down. If you know of anybody who might be interested in the answers to these questions, please share this video and be sure to subscribe to our channel and have your friends or your family also subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, as usual, use the comment section below and we'll be happy to address them. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you at the next video.